Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. The president's legislative agenda, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, started going under a microscope today. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, even acknowledging that he's trying to find consensus on his own side of the aisle.
I'm not going to give details of the ongoing discussion, but I'm talking at both corners of the conference and trying to find the perfect balance.
House committees here in Washington started to work their way through the bill, which, for example, extends the president's 2017 tax cuts while also adding campaign promises like no tax on tips or overtime. But one Republican senator already says when it comes to this bill, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. He is the Republican from the state of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, back with us once again live tonight here on the Hill. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So you had this op-ed out in the Wall Street Journal. We see the headline there, The Ugly Truth About the Big Beautiful Bill. What's beautiful, Senator, as you see it, and what makes you cover your eyes?
Well, this is my third column in a series of three, where I've been pointing out since the first of the year that we need to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending. And I laid out the options. I think this was an extraordinary event, the pandemic. We went from $4.4 trillion in spending to $7 trillion this year. That's a 58% increase. There's no justification for that. So we have to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level. I've laid out options somewhere between $5.5 and at most $6.5 trillion, which would imply a whole lot more savings than the meager $1.5 trillion over 10 years, $150 billion at most. By the way, and then we're increasing spending by $342 billion over 4 years. So again, the savings we're talking about in relationship to the $89 trillion we'll be spending over the next 10 years, it's barely a rounding error.
I heard you just describe it as
minimum,
meager.
It is meager, but at a minimum, we shouldn't be increasing the deficit. And I don't see any scenario that they're discussing right now where we don't actually increase the deficit over 10 years with this big, beautiful bill. So again, I'm all in favor of certainly giving tax relief to middle-income Americans, making sure we don't have an automatic tax increase, providing border funding. But I've always been in favor of a three-step process so we can spend a lot more time on the tax provisions and making sure that we get this type of spending reductions in order to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level.
Are you disappointed in Republicans here in Washington? I mean, meager, rounding error, that doesn't sound like bold or any sort of change that you might seem proud of.
Well, I've always been disappointed of the Uniparty. We've got big spenders in our party too. Listen, it's always easy to spend money, especially when it's not yours. It's very easy to always cut taxes. It's very difficult politically to be the guy who says we can't go to Disney World. We can't afford that.
Right.
We've got this massive structural deficit. And by the way, according to CBO, we're going to add about $22 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years. Go from $37 trillion in debt to 58, 59, over 60 trillion. It's completely unsustainable. This is our one opportunity. Again, Democrats won't help us. They have no problem with that. Republicans have to be the party of fiscal conservatism and control, and right now, we're not.
What about this idea of the SALT cap? So this is one of the issues, right? And you know the issue, but for our audience here on NewsNation or for those listening to us on SiriusXM, that's the state and local deduction, and it benefits a lot of the high-tax states for folks there who end up deducting. And a lot of those states are blue states, right? I had Mike Lawler, he's the House Republican from New York, on the show yesterday. Here's what he told me, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
I've been very clear from the very beginning. If there was not a fix for SALT in the bill, I would be a no. This proposal by the Ways and Means Committee and the Ways and Means Chairman does not address the issue. We are in the process of working with leadership and the administration on this.
So you are a Republican in a purple state. If the House ends up bringing you a bill that really benefits these homeowners in blue states, does it get your support?
Well, again, my primary criteria is I don't want to expand the deficit, and I want to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending and have a process to achieve it and maintain it. We've never had a process to control spending in Washington, D.C. We don't have a balanced budget requirement. The Budget Act didn't do it. Simpson-Bowles didn't do it. So again, I'm a manufacturer. If you don't have a good process, you don't have a good product, this process is rushed. We're not going to have a good product. And by the way, I don't want to subsidize. I want taxpayers to subsidize high-tax states. And that also would expand the deficit. So obviously, I'm opposed to what his bottom line is.
Let's cut to it, because at the end of the day, Senator, if nothing gets done, there will be tax increases. And that would be a massive liability for the Senate. It would be a massive liability for the House. And it's why when I have people on the show, they say, at the end of the day, we're going to get something done. These House Republicans are negotiating. You're negotiating, right? And you will in the future. At the end of the day, do you think this gets done?
I can't predict. Again, I would have done 3 steps, provide the border defense funding. Then I would have just extended the current tax code, take that automatic tax increase off the table. That was a blunder in the 2017 bill. We should have made whatever we did permanent, not automatically expiring. So let's not make that mistake again. By the way, they're making the same mistake again in the House proposal. So again, they haven't learned. And then take the time to get the taxes right. And again, that's going to be complex. And also to bring down spending to a reasonable pre-pandemic level.
Okay.
So again, I'm trying to guide this process so we end up with what ends up being, one big, beautiful bill, which is the 3rd bill in the series.
All right. As they say over at the White House, we'll see what happens. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, with us once again tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
Have a great night.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.